afternoon. I'll try that again. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for a special Juneteenth conversation with two people who are doing really important work in the Department of Juvenile Justice in Georgia. Today, we're joined by Chaplain Danny Horne, who's a graduate, 1991 graduate of the Candler School of Theology at Emory, and currently serves as the Director of Chaplaincy Services for the Georgia Department of Juvenile Justice. He's also the chaplain to the Georgia Juvenile Justice Board of Directors, where he leads the board in corporate prayer and provides pastoral care to those board members. Before he came to the Department of Juvenile Justice, Chaplain Horne had a long career in the Georgia Department of Corrections, where he was also the Director of Chaplaincy Services. And he is a United Methodist ordained clergy person and a senior pastor at local churches in Atlanta, Georgia. We also are joined by Woojin Kang, who is a third-year Master of Divinity student at Candler with a concentration in chaplaincy. He has completed 2 years of service at the Metro Regional Youth Detention Center, both in his Contextual Education 1 and Contextual Education 2 years. And he worked closely with Chaplain Horne in that context. He's currently completing a summer unit of clinical pastoral education and intensive chaplaincy training program at Grady Hospital in Atlanta. Kang is originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. And I am on the faculty at Candler School of Theology, where I'm an assistant professor in the practice of ethics and society and direct Candler's Contextual Education 1 and Clinical Pastoral Education programs, which we'll be talking more about during this conversation. So thank you again for joining us to hear about a partnership that Candler has with the Department of Juvenile Justice. So I think I'll start by asking Chaplain Horne to share a little bit about how the partnership got started 5 years ago and why you initiated a conversation with Candler about this collaboration.
Well, that's a simple question and a little bit complex as well. The simple part of it is that it began with a conversation between myself, Letitia Campbell, Connet 2 Supervisor Tom Elliott. Also, it began with the Department of Juvenile Justice leadership because we wanted to get their thoughts and buy-in, as well as the then director of the Metro Regional Youth Detention Center. So that's how it began. But the behind all of that was an interest in a shared interest in the youth who are incarcerated at the Metro Regional Youth Detention Center and throughout Georgia, and who are really the most sensitive population in the state of Georgia, as well as and in particular the African American youth that we find incarcerated there as well. So it's been the journey started then, and so it's continuing.
Thank you, Chaplain Horne. I'm going to ask just a minute, Lane, is there something we need to do to adjust the feedback?
If you have, if there's volume on your tablet, if you could mute that since you're called into your phone, I think we might be getting some feedback there.
Okay.
Okay, fantastic, much better.
Wow.
So I'll just add to that when you approached Candler to talk about this, that this is part of a program that's very central to Candler's curriculum. The Contextual Education program is a hands-on, experiential, practical learning component of the Master of Divinity degree that engages students from the day they arrive on campus in 2 full years of professional internship experiences. And students are working throughout the Atlanta region in a whole range of settings. So we have a number of students in different correctional facilities, working with refugees and people experiencing homelessness, in retirement communities and hospital settings. So there's a wide range of opportunities for students to be doing that kind of work. And Chaplain Horne saw an opportunity to develop a new partnership. So for Candler, these partnerships with people like Chaplain Horne and with institutions like the Regional Youth Detention Center are very critical. They give students a chance to learn alongside supervisors who have decades of experience and expertise. And for all of us in the community, they give students the ability to bring the questions that arise in their work back to their conversations that are happening in other classes. We do try to develop partnerships that have a long time duration and commitment. So this is our 5th year that we just completed partnering with the Department of Juvenile Justice. We've had 44 students serve as chaplain interns over the course of that time. And 2 of those students have gone on to staff positions in the Department of Juvenile Justice on the chaplaincy staff. I now want to turn to Woojin and ask if you can tell us a little bit about what Candler students do on a day-to-day basis as chaplain interns. What does this look like for you and for your colleagues?
Yes. First, I'm very honored to be speaking with my mentor, Chaplain Horne. Every day at DJJ is different, but something that Chaplain Horne taught us from the very beginning that to this day stays dear to my heart. And I say it anytime I talk about DJJ. Chaplain Horne told us, we are not here to take God into the facility. We are here to meet God who is already here. So that is kind of our mantra. That is what we do. Every time we enter into the facility, we make sure we don't go in with the mentality of we're bringing God to these kids who need it. Rather, we are here in this moment to meet God who is already working within that place. So we do everything from doing unit visits where we go into the units and visit the youth that are within the units, in the day rooms, in their cells, in their rooms. We have our own group sessions where different students will lead, and I had the privilege to create my own curriculum and lead our group sessions with various youth that come every single week. We go into the intake unit where youth who have just come back from court or who have just arrived for the first time, we visit them. So our biggest role as chaplains within Metro RYDC is just to give pastoral presence in whatever way that looks like. And the biggest thing is to listen. And I think that is what Chaplain Horne has always taught us to do, is we're here to listen. Because a lot of these youth do not have anyone that will listen to their voice. And we are there to listen to their voice, but also hopefully be the voice of God to them.
Hmm. That's beautifully said. Was I supposed to say something about that?
You're welcome to jump in. Yes.
Quite beautifully said. And one of the things that I appreciate about the graduate students from Candler is that they have, as Woojin, they have brought the pastoral care as an institutional a standard, and they study that at Candler. They apply that at Metro Regional Youth Detention Center, and they listen to stories. They bring their particular story. They listen to the stories of the youth, and somehow, and I have witnessed this year after year, that something happens, whether it's in a group setting, whether it's in intake, whether it's in the hall, but in particularly the visitation on the dorms, the living units, that God's presence somehow manifests, and it can be in the middle of a conversation, in the middle of a youth's response, and all of a sudden it gets quiet, and we're looking at each other and just for a few moments are unable to talk. But we're all brought to that place, and we certainly believe by the Spirit. And it is so exciting because it happens, as Woojin was saying, in so many different ways and under different circumstances. And he said also that no visit, as far as the graduate students were concerned, no visit is the same. And so there was one story, and it sort of personifies the presence of Woojin and the other graduate students there. This was last year. And Woojin does this also. He prays after a meeting, and at this particular meeting, they, some of them ask, will you pray for my mother? Will you pray for my family? Will you? And those are, wonderful requests. But in this particular setting, after having heard the presentation of the graduate students, the DJJ youth said, I would ask that you would please pray that the judge, that he was going to Superior Court, would you please pray that the judge sees me like you all see me? Mm-hmm. And I was nearly brought to tears, because that is, he grasped what was happening, and many of the youth grasp what is happening in that process. They may not have articulated as clearly as that young man, but the youth respond to the presence of those who are committed to the ministry of listening. And I like to call that when there is an exchange, the liberating conversation, because this is what I believe that is the personification of the ministry of the Christ, listening to those, the disinherited, those who are cast aside, those who believe that they are not a part of the society.
Well, that really leads me to the next question that I was going to open up for you, which is to talk about your vision for the role of chaplaincy services within the Department of Juvenile Justice and within the Metro Regional Youth Detention Center in particular. Maybe you can give us a little sense of what that facility looks like, how it fits into the system, and then how you see the role of chaplaincy within that system.
Well, when I came over from the Department of Corrections, I didn't have any particular specific idea about how the Office of Chaplaincy Services was to look in the Department of Juvenile Justice. As we've been talking about, I came to the Candler School of Theology because I wanted an atmosphere of creativity, an atmosphere that would stir the youths to begin to appreciate their own spirituality. So we did adopt a goal to equip each youth with tools to develop their spirituality, so that the graduate students that we invited in were those that would help them to take something away from that experience that they could use in the community. The other part of that was to begin to look at the curriculum that we wanted to use, the structure that we wanted to use. And I would like to believe that, this was a nice, sharp, concise meeting. It was not. We just knew, and I say we, as in Letitia and Professor Campbell, as Woojin Kang, and the chaplain interns. They really helped to us collectively begin through care, through pastoral care, begin to develop the structure of what the program is developing into. So the first part of what we see happening there is that the graduate students are developing a relationship. The first part is developing relationship with the youth who are there. And that is, and part of that, and an important part of that is the hope that they will be able to appreciate short-term relationships as opposed to staying at the institution for perhaps a whole academic year and seeing the same people. The second part of that in the spring semester is to develop community, and that is that they can apply what they have been taught into making the community that they live in, which is temporarily the Department of Juvenile Justice, a more peaceful, a peaceful place, and to take this kind of hope to the communities, their families, and to see that they are the agents of change, that they have the power to first change their own minds and their ways of looking at the world, and then the next thing is to share these gifts with their families as the graduate students have shared their gifts with them. And I know I've been. Is there another part of that I missed?
I mean, that's fantastic, and I think that vision for chaplaincy services has really shaped the experiences that Candler students have and that they're contributing to in the facility as well. And Woojin, I wonder if you want to add anything to that about that vision of chaplaincy and how it impacted you to be part of that vision.
Yeah, so something that Chaplain Horne made very, very clear to us from the beginning is that, you know, we are not just considered students or interns or people that are here just to learn something, which we were. But the biggest part for Chaplain Horne with us was you are here doing work. You're doing God's work. You are working and serving. And in the same way that Chaplain Horne was saying, we are able to integrate within that community. We're able to fully serve in whatever capacity possible, as well as learn about the gifts and talents that we have, that we are able to apply. That's something I'm always thankful for with Chaplain Horne. He always allowed us to have room to grow and always gave us opportunities to serve. He will be the first person to nudge you and say, hey, you should go pray for him over there. Do you see him over there? Do you see them over there? Like, that's Chaplain Horne's thing of using us, students from Candler, of allowing us to be fully present within that place and the role that we have committed to. So yeah, I think with the Candler relationship, it's a place that we're able to learn about who we are as, you know, people of ministry, but also learning what it is like to use our gifts and talents and to actually be able to use them.
Yeah. How has it shaped your own professional plans to have had this experience so early on in your master's program?
Yeah, so as you, Dr. Campbell, know pretty clearly, and Chaplain Horne as well, it messed me up in the best sense possible. I came in fully gung-ho about knowing my path, which was, you know, do ordination in the UMC, be an elder, and plant a church. That was my thing. And then I met Chaplain Horne and things changed. Finally being able to see myself in a light that I've never seen myself in. Prior to starting at DJJ, I was within church ministry for 5 years. That's all that I knew. But starting to serve within Metro, I was able to discover I have a passion. It's not just, oh, this is a great experience, but I absolutely love being within that place and serving the marginalized. Within a place and a setting where I believe if Jesus was here today, that's where he would be. And to know that made me think, I need to expand my ministry. I am called to the church, but I think Jesus also calls me to the streets, to the jails, to the hospitals, to the places where, you know, are dark. So my experience at DJJ has helped me kind of explore new paths, also very unorthodox ways of ministry. A quote that I'm trying to live by that professors sometimes laugh at when they say, what do you want to do? And I say, I want to do nonecclesial ecclesial ministry. And I don't know what that looks like yet, but it's because of DJJ, it's because of Chaplain Horne that I'm starting to reimagine and recultivate what it looks like for me to do ministry, both in the church, outside of the church, and where the crossroads are.
Can you unpack that phrase a little bit when you say you want to do non-ecclesial, ecclesial ministry? Just a little bit more.
A lot of times people have this dichotomy between a pastor and a chaplain. And a lot of times what that includes is a pastor's in the church, a chaplain's outside of the church. And it seems like it has to be separated. But I'm a believer that it doesn't. I think the person who is within the church needs to be able to leave the church, be able to serve the people not within the walls of the church, but also the people that are sitting at the footsteps of the church. And I want to be able to see how can we integrate chaplaincy with pastoral ministry? Because a lot of times people think pastors and chaplains have to be different, but why can't my pastor be a chaplain, and why can't my chaplain be a pastor? And I think that is where I want to be able to discover what that looks like when we bring those two together.
Yeah. Well, you brought up the issue of who's inside the church and outside the church and where that ministry happens. And I think this is a very live question for us right now, because for the last several months, many people have been serving and leading and, being pastors and caregivers remotely in all different ways. And I know this has been a time of very intense change for the Department of Juvenile Justice and for chaplains in all kinds of settings. Chaplain Horne, I wonder if you could share a little bit about what has the COVID-19 pandemic meant for the young people and the staff in the facilities where you're providing chaplaincy, and what changes have you seen, and what kind of long-term impact will the pandemic have?
It was a surprise to have to begin to think anew about how we do ministry that was prior to the circumstances of COVID-19 done face to face. And this is a sort of departure from the ministry of Christ, who was amongst multitudes, as we remember through the scriptures, and even through our own experience, as we know through the church, and how our gatherings have been, that there is a shared experience there of this great change that has happened. So we needed to look at what needed to be done and what could be done through the engagement of technology. I'd like to say that the graduate students were really very creative in terms of that, and very quickly decided that they would leave the youth with something, having not being able to go into the facility at all. I was not able to go into the facilities. Our regional chaplains weren't able to go into the facility to talk to the youth face to face. But we did not have the structure that says, well, if they need a chaplain, call a chaplain. So the graduate students developed a devotion, a week-long devotion called Lights, and it was a beautiful work. Then they finished that, which included the Contextual Education 1 and Contextual Education 2 students. So they completed that, and they completed a video that will be presented to the youth at the Metro Regional Youth Detention Center. So that opens up another way of looking at ministry, which we did employ. There were youth that were in different parts of the state that whose relatives or someone in their family was in trouble, and Emily Kelly is an example, a Candler graduate that they called with a meeting, something like this, a Zoom meeting, and she was able to provide pastoral care to that youth in that particular setting. So as we move, but it's also opened up the door to all kinds of different things that can happen as a result of this experience. So we don't know whether it's going to be a couple of months or a longer period of time. We're under restrictions. All of us who go into the facilities have to wear masks, and so and the contact with youth has been truncated from what it was in the past. But at the same time, looking at technology, looking at media presentations, this has opened the door to rethinking and including those kinds of avenues when we move back to a more quote unquote normal contact with our youth.
Yeah. Woojin, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Chaplain Horne knows it was very sad for me because I was there since 2018 doing Contextual Education 1, and finding abruptly as my internship is coming to an end that I was not able to go in to say goodbye. I wasn't able to part ways with the youth that I've been serving for all this time in that way because of COVID. So if I'm honest, it took me a lot and a while to be able to cope with that, of just finding out I can't go in, I can't say goodbye, and it's the end of my internship. So that was challenging, but I was very thankful for the cohort this year that came up with the idea of making a devotional, making a video. So still, to a certain capacity, I felt like I was able to be connected and to be able to give that parting goodbye in a fashion that's not normal, but a way that they can still hear my voice and my face, and I'm reminded of them as well.
Yeah, so important to be able to figure out new ways to keep those connections alive. The other big conversation that I think is shaping our national conversations right now are these conversations about criminal justice and policing. And given those broader conversations about investing in communities and rethinking the role of the criminal justice system in how we expect it to address underlying social issues, Chaplain Horne, I wonder if you see possibilities for change and for ways that we might be able to do more to support the young people who you all encounter in the DJJ and addressing their needs outside of the criminal justice system. Do you see changes happening in those kinds of structural ways?
Absolutely, absolutely. I believe that Woojin, I don't want to pick on Woojin, but since he's here, he is an example. He is an example of that. And while you were formulating the question, I was thinking that the chaplains, and rightly so, are in a intensive learning experience, as you described. Even when they become more mature in ministry, they are still in an intensive learning experience, because a part of that work as a chaplain is that you don't know, until you are in relationship with people. They are not cookie cutters. It's not a cookie cutter approach. And when you approach that ministry, there's something you have to be anticipating that somehow the Lord will be with you, and there is going to be some healing that happens. So it may be that there is an awakening, and I'm seeing this, an awakening amongst clergy, and this is not to diminish clergy at all, but as Woojin was saying, if there is a combined, they don't have to be separated, this pastoral care journey with their congregants, or those who are amongst the disinherited, why should there be a separation? And in that regard, if that is the case, I believe that the churches, so-called, I like to call them faith families, will begin to see a shared mission, if you will, a shared mission that has the redemption and it has a way of honoring the stories of the congregation, and who cannot help but, if they are presented with an opportunity to be in ministry with the disinherited, turn that down when we begin to look at ourselves as the true vessels of ministry, and look at the fields that are white to harvest before us, that we may not have seen before, and we may have disregarded because we weren't looking with a larger view. And I think this is something that the COVID-19 has taught us as well, to be considerate of others when we have these restrictions, and that our thoughts have to be, well, how is it that I can take care of my neighbor under these kinds of circumstances, and how can we as a church, we as a group of chaplains who are graduate students in the Metro Regional Youth Detention Center reach out and help those. And I'm saying that for, I don't know if Woojin has heard me, but I believe that pastoral care is the ministry of the future, and that's not to exclude anyone. It is to include everyone, as we have agreed that this is pastoral care is the ministry of Jesus, where there's something happens with the care of concern, the need of the individuals whose ministry we're directed at, and something miraculous happens. And I want to say again that I just happen to be, on this journey that has allowed me the blessing and honor to be serving in that capacity. I did not put myself there. I happen to have been in the Georgia Department of Corrections, and I happen to have been introduced by the path to the Department of Juvenile Justice, and also to the opportunities of seeing who can come with a heart for these young people, and see about how we can impart gifts that we have to them, and that they may in turn impart them to others that are in need as well.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that strikes me, as I've been thinking about Juneteenth today and what it means for us now in the context of both the pandemic and the wave of conversation and protest around racial justice that we've seen. I've been thinking a lot about the fact that emancipation is an ongoing process. It doesn't just happen at one moment when
Right.
the law changes or when the policy changes. And when I hear you all talk about your work with young people, and Chaplain Horne, when you talk about the liberating conversation being the paradigm that you think about when you engage those young people, I see a connection there between that sort of ongoing work of liberation. And I wonder if you all see resonance, especially today, with the work that you're doing and what Juneteenth might mean to you.
Yeah, if I can chime in. Juneteenth commemorates something that happened in 1865, and we're at 2020. And I might be going off the whim to say this, but when I enter into Metro RYDC, I still see a form of slavery of Black bodies here in America. And that is why, to a certain extent, it breaks my heart. And especially with everything that's going on in today's world in America, we understand that Juneteenth is something that's in celebration, but also something that is still in grieving and mourning, that it is not fully come into fruition yet. It is still happening, like Dr. Campbell said. And I'm someone, like Chaplain Horne and I, we talked about this a lot through the past couple of years, but I believe in the justice system. And I do believe that certain people deserve to be in whatever you want to call it, of breaking the law or whatever it may be. But I think we both can see, though, that this is much more than a criminal justice issue, but a systemic issue. Why is it that we see the same faces come into DJJ? Why is it that, you know, I see the same youth come in 8 times and people will say, well, it's because he committed crimes 8 times. I'm sorry, I'll be the first one to tell you that's not why. It's a bigger systemic issue that I'm so glad that finally we are shedding light to. That's not just about the individual. It's not that they're just a bad person. Don't get me wrong, some people have bad tendencies, and I'm not trying to justify what's happened, but I'm trying to bring to light that these youth probably wouldn't be in the situation they are if there were systemic change. And I'm a strong believer in that. Why is it that we see the same Black bodies constantly come into the same facility over and over again? Is it just because of them, or is it because of deeper generational things that have happened because of the systemic issues with the criminal justice system, with their socioeconomic issues in this country? There are so many things that have to do with that. And I think finally it's an opportunity for the world to see what people like Chaplain Horne and I have been able to see. If I'm honest, you know, I am saying this as a non-Black African-American person. I'm saying this as a person of color, but someone that does come from a certain position of privilege. But because of my exposure with the youth at DJJ, I've been able to see the downfall of what this system has produced and continues to produce. But I'm glad that through all that is happening today with voices that haven't been heard, that are finally being heard, is shedding light to the things that need to be seen, not just by the layperson, but honestly, like Chaplain Horne was saying, by the clergy. Because if we take a step back and look, what has clergy really been doing about these systemic issues? Don't get me wrong, there are people who have been, but I think this is a calling for us to take deeper steps in fighting for justice in whatever way that may look like.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I would say well said, and you know, part of the paradigm that you described, Woojin, is I would say to be added to that is appreciation of the meaning of Juneteenth, which has not stopped, as you described, and Letitia has said as well. It did not end with the Emancipation Proclamation or the end of the Civil War. What I do sense as one of the chief power, the chief structure or support that you find in is a disappearance of what I'm. You know, I don't think I'm, you know, ancient or by any means, but having grown up in a small small coastal town with a very strong connection to the past, and that past has been faith in God, trust in God, and it has embodied a lived out, so much so that I thought it was normal to expect that you would be kind, not to just those that were your neighbors, but kind to all that you meet. You had to be kind to everyone. That was a fundamental lesson and teaching in the community, and not because you know, being kind to people who do not look like you, because, well, you know, you have to get along with everybody in the world. Yes, you do, except that you are accountable to the Creator. You are accountable to God, and this was taught in the churches. It was taught in homes. It was taught in the streets, and I think that this is part of what sustained people of color who have been called African American, who've been called Negro, who've been called colored, or slaves, or African slaves, or what other name that has been attached. But when one of the graduate students in the class, a couple of classes before you, said to a class that I asked her to come in and to speak to Cecily, you cannot go into the Department of Juvenile Justice without being broken. You cannot walk and be among the youth without being broken. And just because I happen to be an African American and I'm going into this youth Department of Juvenile Justice setting for the first time, I have been broken. I have been broken because I'm coming, because I become face to face with the systemic issues, the societal issues, the religious issues, the economic issues, the political issues, being able to see those and how they have affected adversely. So what I am seeing, and this is my own lesson, what I am seeing in terms of what has come to perhaps in society developed into, look at those people. It may be that you're not seeing what is actually there. You're not seeing the effects of unjust structures within the system that have affected for generations and generations, as you well said, Woojin, that this is the result of the breaking down of the families that used to bolster these young people as they went out into the world. Certainly bolstered me, my siblings, and many that I know of. But without them, it is a very difficult. It's a very difficult path. It's a very difficult life, and not that they cannot recover, because God is with them, but it requires people with an understanding worldview of what it means to be broken, and that happens when you come face to face with these young people, and it happens when you come face to face with others in a we like to say transparent, but a very honest assessment of what is happening and our participation in what is happening and the decision that we have made to help to change or look for ways to change what has been happening.
Yes, thank you so much. I think this intensity of meeting face to face, not only the individual who's there, but being able to see them in this larger web and context and all of the ways that their own lives and our lives have been shaped by these systems and histories that we inherit is very powerful. I want to encourage participants, if you have questions, we have a few minutes left, and feel free to submit those in the Q&A tab in the webinar, and we'll take as many of them as we can. The one question that has come in, I think, really follows on what you've both been talking about, and the thing that both of you have said, that you really cannot enter the RYDC or the DJJ without being broken by what you encounter there. So how then do you balance your life in a way that you can continue to go in to that space with a word of hope and redemption and sustenance to offer? How do you do that again and again, and take care of yourself so that you don't end up burned out or cynical?
Mm.
You got this, Chap, or you want me to? You
can start. I'll add on. Go ahead, Woojin.
Yeah, this is an extremely good question, and a question that I struggle with for a very long time. Because yeah, it's not easy, and we were full-time students, and we would go on Thursday night after like an exam, being burnt out already from school, and you enter into a place that is filled with brokenness, to be honest. And excuse me, and it's just challenging. It's very challenging, but what I found to be extremely helpful in that is to understand the good works that are happening in those interactions, in those moments, to understand that while I'm there, good things are happening, the Spirit is moving, God is really doing things. But what was hard for me is when you leave that place, you understand that though there may have been good impact done through my, 4 hours at a time we would be there, but to know that there's still so much that needs to be done, that there are still so many youth in there that are broken and feeling sad and distant. And there would be many times that I would go into my car and literally start crying because I just feel that brokenness still with me. But how was I able to not be burnt out? Is the people that are around me. That's what's beautiful about this program, is we are within a cohort. And I know right now there are people from my cohort, like Jovan is in the Zoom now, and we had this group with Chaplain Horne and also with Chaplain Emily Kelly. We had people that got what we were doing, that understood the toil that will take on us personally. But there is a cohort that we can walk together, that we can tarry with, that we can lean upon. And yeah, honestly, that was my number one thing. That, and having, people that I love near me, constantly pushing me and caring for me, and learning what it means to do self-care, which is something I'm still learning today. But it's not a journey that's being done alone. And I think that's what kept me going.
And I just wanted to, beautifully said, I just wanted to add to that, one of the things that graduate students coming into that setting struggle with, and it's easy to see why they do, and that is looking at the structures, because they become so apparent in that setting, looking at the structures that have been in place for some time that assist in bringing youth to the doorsteps of the Department of Juvenile Justice. And I say that when they come, they are in crisis. They're in crisis as soon as they come to the doorstep. So it's not something that is easily fixed. But I believe that the focus must remain on the youth. That you can be aware of the structures, and you can begin to address the structures. Well, why aren't they doing this? Why are they doing that? Why are they doing the other? And those are excellent questions, and I've heard them continue to come with their excellent questions. Except that's not why you are here, or why you are there in the Metro Regional Youth Detention Center. Your focus is the youth and what you are going to be doing to affect those structures is what you take away from that experience.
We have another question in the Q&A, and that's, can students who are chaplains in the DJJ go to court to support the young people when they have a court date or when they're before a judge?
Yes. Yeah, and we have we've seen that. Did you do that, Woojin?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay, good. We've had youth, chaplains do that, and it's not that they are an adversary. The posture that they take is to sit and of the young people that are that have to go to superior court. Can you hear me still?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so we're coming to the end of our time, and I wanted to see if there's anything else that you all want to add in closing about this partnership and what it means to you, and perhaps what your hopes are for it.
I'd like to say that it is a wonderful and fruitful partnership between the Department of Juvenile Justice and the Candler School of Theology, and my hope and prayer is that it continues. And I've not been disappointed by the great talent, the concern, the creativity that Woojin is an example of. And I say an example because there has not been one graduate student that has come into the Metro Regional Youth Detention that has not brought a distinguishable or or set of gifts that that the youth could not benefit from, and there has somehow been a caring on the part of each of them that's uniquely theirs, uniquely theirs, and that is a beautiful thing to see. So I'm hoping that that we continue on in this journey for as long as the Lord sees fit.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this partnership has been transformative in my life. And like Chaplain Horne said, I would love to see, a continuation, longevity in this, that other people like me will be able to come in and discover and explore who they are even more and more clearly and deeply. And I think just my final thing that I want to say is I just hope that people can be able to see the beauty in all people. I think that's what DJJ and Chaplaincy has taught me. When you hear the story and the crime of what they've committed, yes, it's heavy. But to know that even in the midst of that there is still Imago Dei, the image of God within that person. And it's not easy to see that. But I just hope that we as people, that we will continue to strive to see that in other people.
Thank you both so much for your time today. I know that you're both in the middle of a day when you are serving as a chaplain and a spiritual caregiver to others in your settings. And so I'm grateful for your time. And I'm really grateful for the vision and the commitment that you've brought to the work with the young people in the DJJ and to that ongoing work of creating a society where all people can flourish and where all people can be emancipated. I think that is a shared work, and I'm grateful to you for your part in it. So thank you. To all the participants, thank you very much. I'm gonna hand this back over to Lane from the Alumni Affairs Office.
Thank you so much, Dr. Campbell. I want to echo my thanks to Chaplain Horne and to Woojin Kang for giving your time and expertise to share a little bit of this amazing partnership that Candler has and to share it with our entire alumni community. And thank you to Dr. Campbell for your organization and patience all along in pulling this together. This was a fantastic conversation. And I do want to take this time to acknowledge this special day of Juneteenth and hope this is leaving you with some thoughts to ponder and reflect upon throughout the rest of the day. We'll be sending the recording out Monday morning, so if you missed any part of it or have some friends you want to share it with, we'll have that for you to share. And I want to wish you a happy rest of the day, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
You all. Thank you.